Alright, so once you've made your drawings for your pattern, you're going to bring them into Illustrator and vectorize them and make them into a pattern that repeats infinitely for an area. You're going to use a lot of the tools you've used before in Illustrator, and you're also going to use a very special tool that comes with CS6 here. Your basic pattern just has to tile square to square. That's typically called a P1 wallpaper group, or you can use a more complex tessellation pattern if you want to. Obviously, the pattern tool in CS6 is extremely complex and makes everything extremely easy for you. Of course, the objective here is to make an actual pattern, and in the demonstration I will show you how to do that and how I want you to hand in the file, because there's a couple of special requirements for that. In the project folder, there's a bunch of resources for pattern making. This was one of the resources you could have used when before CS6 came out and kind of made it obsolete, but you can still try this if you want to do a more complex pattern, or think about it when you're making more complex patterns. This shows you kind of how to make patterns with more complex tessellation groups. And this here was the old method you had to use. I will not show you how to use this method, although there are resources in the project folder that show you how, if you're interested in that kind of history. But yeah, the way and the method you're going to use is much easier. In CS6 there is a pattern panel that allows you to automatically create patterns, and it is extremely useful and just amazingly easy to use. So yeah, here's some examples of professional work. At the very end of this kind of slideshow here are some student examples. Just sort of peruse through these, or look at the PowerPoint to see some examples of professional patterns. If you're stuck for ideas, you can come here and look through these, or if you don't know how to color your pattern, this will give you a bunch of inspiring ideas on how to do that. Alright, so once you create your variations, your 25 variation drawings, you'll scan those and you'll trace maybe one or two of them in Illustrator. So you're going to trace it using the pen tool. Obviously, all of your projects before this have kind of built up to this moment. And then I'm also going to walk you through how to create color fills. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. In the demonstration I'll walk through all of them, so when you get to that point, just sort of follow along. And there's tons of other resources for this project. We're going to get kind of complex with this. Color is not easy to manage, but once you get the hang of it, it really becomes second nature. And essentially you're digitizing something that is not quite polished yet. So that's kind of the core objective of this project, along with making something that represents you or a brand or an identity in your mascot. Here's some examples. All of these, or most of these maybe, at some point or another, were made in Illustrator. And again, look to these for examples if you can't think of how to color your project. Try to be bright and bold with your color choices. There are tons of resources in the project folder. There's a handwritten and handmade tutorial that I made. I know in that tutorial I use text, and I say before in your variations drawings that you're not allowed to use text. I'm kind of just sort of bending the rules here. Like if you make kind of a Superman character and put a little S on there, obviously I'll give you a little bit of leeway, but there are tons of, these are all pictures of the different tutorials on how to trace something and make it a vector image and add color to it. So if you don't like my written tutorial, if you don't like my demonstration video, look in the project folder, and there's tons and tons of other tutorials as to how to do the exact same thing differently. Alright, I am going to walk you through how to trace pretty much any drawing that you make, and this is actually for the Mascot assignment and the make a pattern assignment, but really the skills in this assignment can transfer to pretty much any process where you just trace a drawing and add color to it. There's a lot of great tips in this video, so just sort of bear with me and skip around to different sections to see different kinds of techniques if you know what you're doing and what you want to do. First we got to start with a scan of a drawing. So you're going to go File, Place, and then find your scan wherever you put it. Mine is in a bunch of folders here, and I believe, yep, right there. Okay, so you know, scans are usually best when you're putting drawings in to Illustrator because they can get the most data. They're the most accurate. And what I also recommend you do is you place your scan into a new layer. So I don't quite have a new layer yet, so I'm going to go make a new layer over in the layer palette. If this palette isn't open, go to Window, Layers to open it, and then the new layer button is at the very bottom. Looks like a sticky note. Okay, so my linked file is right here. I'm going to click and drag that layer listing to layer 2. Okay, and I'm going to put that below my work layer here, and I'm also going to lock it. If you find that your layer though with the drawing on it is a bit too dark and it's not going to show up, or it's going to show up too well, sorry, and you can't see what you're drawing, then what you might want to do is select that layer, or select that that image file and go to transparency and turn down the transparency a bit to about 50% here, especially if you trace it in black ink. If you don't see your transparency panel, again, Window, Transparency, and it should be open. Once you've got that kind of set up, lock that, and then go to your work layer. If you don't like working on a layer with everything on it, which is kind of what this layer is, I've already kind of built this design once, so I'm just going to make a new separate work layer here and change its color from green to nice blue here. Okay. Essentially what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to do the shoes down here. Alright, so I'm going to trace the shoe here. To do that, first I'm going to zoom in. Again, you can zoom in with Control plus or Control minus, or you can hold down the Alt key and use your click wheel. I'm going to switch to my pen tool. I'm just going to do a basic outline of the shoe here, and it doesn't have to be super accurate because I can always clean it up. Again, to make corners, you Alt click to pull out a handle. Okay, and right now I've got the default stroke and fill, which is black and white, so I can set my fill, which is white now, to none so that I don't hide my drawing here, and then keep drawing. Again, to make corners, you're going to hold down the Alt key and click out from the point to pull a handle. Okay, and I'm doing all right here. My shoe looks okay. Alright, but we probably have to clean up some of these curves down here at the bottom. So now that I'm done drawing, I'm going to switch to my direct select tool. Okay, and so if I click on any point with my direct select tool, I can pull out the handles. Okay, I can reorganize those and make them a little bit more accurate to what I need them to be here. Okay, we'll turn that up. Once you've got it all adjusted, you can add points with the pen tool or subtract points with the pen tool. That's always an option. Sometimes when you're editing, it's easy to toggle between the pen tool and the last selection tool you used. You can do that with when you have the pen tool clipped by holding down the control key. So if I hold down the control key, I can adjust my anchor point here, and then go, if I don't like it, I can go back to the pen tool and just hover that over that anchor point, and then you'll see a little minus sign, and that means you can delete that anchor point. So now I can toggle back to my direct select tool and just make that a path. The less points you have, the better off you are, the easier your object will print, and the easier it is to manage. Okay, so I'm actually pretty happy with this right now. So let's give it some color and give it some pizzazz. Alright, so to add a fill color to a closed shape, you just need to select that whole shape. Right now I've only got one anchor point up here selected, so I'm going to go to my regular selection tool, select my whole shape, and then I'm going to go, I can do several things. I can double click on my fill box to open up the color picker. I can go to my swatches palette. If you don't see that, go to window swatches to show that, or the color palette, which is part of the group with the swatch palette, and I can pick a color from there, like red. Doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm just going to stay with red here. Doesn't matter which red. And then I'm going to leave the stroke black, because now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of pizzazz to the lines. You're going to use something called the width tool. The width tool does exactly what it says it does. It changes the width of paths. So if you go over here to your toolbox and hover over this tool right here, it says it's the width tool. Click on that, and you can click directly on an unselected object. Our object is selected, so I'm going to zoom in real quick here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some of my lines down here on the bottom of the shoe a little bit thicker. So I'm going to click on this anchor point and drag outward. And you notice it makes my path a little bit thicker here. So I can keep doing that. I can just click anywhere and widen my path. Okay. So I can do it over here. Okay. A couple of tricks to the width tool. Let's say I don't want my path to get thicker in both directions. If I hold down the Alt key and click on one side here, I will increase the width of one side. Now, what happened here was there's an anchor point with the width set there, and there's an anchor point with the width set there. To delete anchor points or width points, just click on them and then hit the delete key or the backspace key. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm just going to widen that. Okay, looks like it's still kind of pinched at the corner there, so we'll delete that and we'll go to the corner here and try to pull that out. Zoom in way in. Sometimes this is a problem with the width tool. There are width points in the corners and they can pinch. That can be a problem for inside corners. There it goes. Alright. So, I've got some dynamism to this line here. Okay? And it looks a bit more active. If you keep messing around with it, you can get some pretty interesting results. I kind of like to do this to make my drawings look a bit more cartoony and alive. It really helps a line drawing become something more. So try it on your drawing. Live Paint saves an awful lot of time, and it's a really, really handy tool. So now I'm going to draw just a handful of other details in here, like my triangles. I'm going to draw my triangles here. Okay. And I'm going to draw my the bottom of my shoe. Okay. And the beauty of Live Paint is that I don't need to make these close shapes at all. I just need to make them touch other shapes. Okay? And because they're touching, when I make this a live paint group, it will paint these shapes automatically for me, which saves an awful lot of time and effort. So let's just sort of select our objects and make it a live paint group. So I'm going to click and drag with my selection tool, select all my objects, and then go to the live paint tool here. If I click and hold on the shape builder tool, one of the options is the live paint bucket. So release your mouse over that tool. And then just click on any group of selected objects to make it a live paint group. So if I click once, notice it painted the bottom of my shoe red, but what it also did is it changed the width of my shoe here. So any kind of special objects, like objects that you made using the width tool, those properties won't stay put. If you want that to stay how you designed it originally, you're going to have to do an extra step before you live paint your objects. Okay, so one thing you can do to your objects before you live paint them, or one thing you can do at any point in your drawing to your objects to give you more control sometimes, is you can expand your objects. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, okay, and I've got my group of objects ready to live paint here. But when you live paint objects, stuff like this special line here that's been adjusted with the width tool becomes a uniform line. So we're going to expand that object. So I'm going to switch to my selection tool, okay, and I'm just going to select my shoe here with its special properties. And then I'm going to go to Object, Expand Appearance. Now you'll notice what that did was it made my path a shape. And in the Layers panel here, if you take a look at it, it's grouped with my red fill. Okay, so these are two separate shapes now, and the outline of the shoe is actually something called a compound path, which is a complex shape with a hole in the middle of it. The cool thing about this is I can actually adjust this with my direct select tool, and it has an awful lot of control points on it. Okay, if I zoom in here, you see all the anchor points it made for me. So I can move these around. I can really fine-tune the edge of my shoe here like it was a normal shape using these anchor points. So that can be kind of handy if you're kind of a control freak and you like to really fine-tune things. But the problem with this is it's no longer a path. We can't change it with the width tool. We can't do much like we did with the width tool. So you kind of have to do this as a last step. Let's make it a live paint group now. Okay, so now I'm going to make my shoe a live paint group again, and this time my special outline here, because it's expanded, will stay that shape. So first things first, to make a live paint group out of some shapes, we just click and drag to select those shapes, and then go to your live paint bucket tool, which is under the shape builder tool. So you'll probably have to click and hold and release your mouse over the live paint bucket tool to get it to work. Okay, I'm going to fill the bottom of my shoe here with yellow. You can switch colors by using the arrow keys, or you can switch colors for your live paint bucket tool using the swatches palette. Okay, and just click on a swatch and then click on your object to color it. So you notice now the sole of my shoe has become a filled shape. That saved a lot of time. I didn't have to build a closed shape to create that. I just had to overlap this line here with the bottom of my shoe. And you notice any other overlapping shapes become paintable shapes as well. So now all my triangles, I can paint those separate colors. Alright, that's really handy. If I zoom in, you'll notice these overlapping shapes here become paintable shapes. I can paint those if I want. And what live paint does is it automatically detects gaps. Okay, so that's what those little red lines are. If it sees that two shapes are really close together, it'll close that gap and make this whole area a separate shape from this whole area. That can be really handy if you don't quite overlap your line with another shape. Right now, this is a live paint group. So if I want to add to this, I'll kind of show you how to do that. It's not hard. Okay, so to add shapes or objects to our live paint group here, what we're going to want to do is build them first. So if I want to add my sock shape and my leg here to my live paint group, I just got to switch back to my pen tool. Okay, I'm going to build the sock. Alright, and we're going to make that outline black real quick for ease of use. Okay, and the basic principle of live paint is if your lines overlap, they'll create closed shapes. So my leg here is open. It probably won't be painted as a solid fill, okay, because this is too open. But I'm going to want to close the gaps between my sock here and my leg. So switch over to your direct select tool and close those gaps, okay, so that you create a fill shape for your sock. Alright, so now I've got some new paths right next to my live paint group here. So I'm just going to take my regular select tool and select all those paths and my live paint group. The live paint group acts as a group, so all of these are part of the same object or same group. And I'm going to click and drag here to select that group and my new paths. And then you're going to see this option in the upper right hand corner of your screen called Merge Live Paint, and that's going to allow you to merge all those objects with your live paint group that already exists. So just click on that option, and now they're all part of the live paint group. So what we can do is we can go back to our live paint bucket tool, and we can paint that if we want. I can paint my sock white, and you'll notice it's got a white fill now. My leg, though, because it's such an open shape, doesn't actually have a shape to fill because it's open. But if I draw the rest of my pretzel here, that'll become a closed shape once we merge it as a live paint group, and then I can paint those two. When you're all said and done with your drawing and you've got everything colored, no matter what you did, whether you did it with just closed shapes or you use live paint, one of the last things you can do if you want is you can expand objects and you can kind of fine-tune them. I sometimes do that when I'm all done. So again, if you have a live paint group or you have a regular set of objects, it doesn't matter what. With the live paint group, the expand button is right here in the upper right hand corner. So if I hit expand, suddenly this isn't a live paint group anymore, it's just a regular group. Okay, so if I ungroup this group, okay, so if it's selected and I go object ungroup, that live paint group has a bunch of editable objects in it. And the way live paint ungroups is it groups the colored parts and shapes separate from the paths and lines. So you can ungroup those even further, okay, if you want. And then you can just adjust these individual paths as if they were paths, which is really, really handy if you want to, change the thickness or use your width tool on them, okay. Another thing you can do is once all your paths are kind of how you want them, is you can expand them one more step and they'll become shapes. So let's say I want to make this here a shape to mess with. If I select a path and I go object expand, okay, that'll make it a shape. Okay, you can kind of notice it's a shape because now there's anchor points on the edges outlining the stroke we applied to that path, and there is no path in the middle, so it behaves just like a shape would. I can take my direct select tool and I can take individual anchor points and move those around just like I would any other shape. This can be really, really handy if you want to really fine-tune certain things, like this sock area here. If I just want to have absolute control over how these paths appear, I might want to expand this into a shape just to give myself more control than I would have with the width tool. So these are some things you can do to trace and colorize your mascot. He needs to be fully traced and fully colored before you submit him, and just have fun playing around with these tools and coloring your mascot. You'll be surprised at how easy it is once you practice it, and yeah, just have fun with it. This same set of processes can also be used for making your pattern and pretty much anything else you do in Illustrator. This gives you the most control over how you trace and color your drawings.